broadcasting now.
Well, good evening, Spokane Public Schools family. Thank you for being here tonight on another series of our webinars leading up to the start of the school year, and it's fast approaching. And we know that the beginning of every year and the lead up to the first day always brings a flurry of emotions, and for some kids, worry, and for parents getting all of their details and items and materials in place. And this year's no different, but it's different. And there's definitely a different tone to this year, and a lot more to consider and a lot more to work through. And we recognize that, and we're so appreciative of the opportunity to share some more information with you tonight, giving you an opportunity to see some things firsthand of what it looks like as we continue to all work together to get through this really challenging time. And we can get through this together if we partner, if we communicate, and if we do everything we can to focus in on serving our students and making this year as best as it can possibly be, given this really challenging moment that we find ourselves in. So I'm fortunate to be here this evening with several members of our district team, and we'll start by introducing each of them, and then we will share an overview of some information, and then as we have each week, we'll step into some questions and answers, and we'll do everything we can to get through as many questions and answers as possible. There's almost 1,000 attendees this evening watching, so we'll get through as many as we can. So to start, to introduce our team, we have Dr. Oscar Harris, who is our Director of Family and Community Engagement. We have Gwen Harris, who is our Executive Director for Elementary Schools and Option Programs. We have Heather Bybee, who is our Chief Academic Officer. Scott Kerwin, who is our Director for Technology and College and Career Readiness. Sean Jordan is our Executive Director for all of our secondary schools. Jennifer Keck is an Executive Director for elementary schools. And we have Dr. Mark Anderson, who is our Associate Superintendent for the district. And then joining us as well is Rochelle Miller. She's our Executive Assistant, and Allie Barrera, who is on our communications team. So again, tonight is about the logistics of starting school. So we have had a series of webinars on our elementary model, our secondary model. We've provided general overviews along the way. Next week, we'll be specifically focusing on kindergarten. We've had lots of questions about what that experience will be like for our youngest learners. And that will be the topic for the webinar the following Thursday. But tonight's about the logistics of school. And it's about supplies, technology, getting all those pieces in place so that we can help our students have a great launch to the year. And this is just very much so a non-typical experience and something that is really unprecedented. But we want to do everything we can to help you be prepared and have the information that you need to help your student be successful. So with that, Heather is going to share an overview, as well as Dr. Anderson, on a couple items, and then we'll open it up for question and answers.
All right, thank you, Dr. Swinard. I didn't know if you wanted to do a quick, oh, sorry, it's not going. There we go, sorry. A quick overview of all of our reopening plans.
Yeah, so as we've shared, we had an opportunity in the spring. We collected input through a thought exchange for all of our families and staff. We then launched a Safe School Reopening Task Force. It involved over 150 members that participated in a series of committees focused on a number of topics. And then we spent the summer months engaged with our partners at the Spokane Education Association to develop a thoughtful plan for our students and address the myriad of details that go into making sure that all the pieces are in place to have a successful start to the school year within a distance model. As we've said before, we desperately want our kids in our building, and we desperately look forward to returning to in-person instruction for all of our students every day. And we're going to be eager to get back to that as soon as we receive that guidance from public health officials. As the conditions improve, we'll look to start phasing kids back in, most likely starting with our youngest learners, and then going slowly and methodically to make sure everyone's safe, make sure protocols are in place as we work back to get kids into our building. So that's definitely our goal. But as we've shared, the guidance from public health officials is to start the year in a distance learning model. And so you'll hear about some of those details for the start of school related to that. And then as we start phasing and we start moving back to in-person instruction, we'll begin with a hybrid model. And that will include grades K-4 going every day, and it'll include grades 5-12 alternating schedules. The reason behind that is we need to make sure that we provide and meet the social distancing guidelines that are going to be required of us. Kids have to have 6 feet of separation between them in classrooms. So our K-4 classrooms would be staffed to maintain that. And then in grades 5-12, we'll have kids alternating, half coming on one day, half coming at the next, in order to manage the total number of kids on site at any one time, and also be able to meet that social distancing requirement in our classroom. So as I mentioned, we're starting the year in a full distance environment. We'll be moving to that hybrid model, but we also know that we'll have a number of our families that they're not going to feel comfortable coming back into our school buildings at any point this year, and they've shared that with us. And so that's why we are providing our Spokane Virtual Learning Academy option. And that's really the option for families if they want to be in a distance environment the entire year.
All right, with that, I will go into a little bit of an overview of what starting in full remote looks like and kind of highlight some of the changes we've made in the learning we had from spring. So for all of our students, there will be a real-time school day with an identified start and an identified end. There'll be specific times for each content and each class period at the secondary level. There'll be a blend of live instruction, group work, and independent activities. We are not expecting our students to be tethered to their computers without breaks. We believe in synchronous and asynchronous learning. There'll be time for specialists and electives. There'll be time for interventions and support with specific time to contact teachers outside of the school day. As a district, we've decided on Microsoft Teams as our digital platform. Microsoft has put in a ton of time and resources into developing their K-12 solutions, and we'll be highlighting some of those today. In addition, we have the availability to check out a laptop to each student. That'll be another aspect we talk about today. And in a limited number, we'll be providing in-person instruction for groups of students who are furthest away from the educational justice. So first, I will just give you a snapshot of an elementary day. So with school starting at 8:30, we say get your students ready at 8:25, have them set up their learning space, and at 8:30, class will start with a class meeting. And oftentimes that's reading a story, that's asking questions, it's getting to know you activities, and it's setting the theme for the day and the agenda. And so we really think it's important that we attend to students' social emotional needs given the last 6 months. Then there are 3 hours of what we're calling an instructional block. During that time, students will have a compacted elementary day experience. So they might start at 9 o'clock with a lesson on literacy. They might break into small groups and do some partner work, and then they might go work independently for a while and read a story, and then come back and share their thinking. And then they might go to their virtual PE class and to their virtual science class and come back for a math lesson. So with that experience, they will see that throughout the week with each of their specialists there. And then at 11:50, there's an hour break for lunch where we see younger kids being able to eat and play, and some older kids either helping their siblings, helping at home, or having some independent work time. That extends into the 12:50 to 1:50. Then from 1:50 to 2:30, we have some really intentional time set aside to invite small groups of students back. So during this time, I might invite back a handful of students who might need a little extra time on their math lesson, or I might want to stretch them to learn a little bit more because they're ready for more. So that will be time set aside each day. If a student is not invited back to that time at the elementary level, there will be a specialist offering. So maybe I'm not in the group that's coming back on Monday. Well, that means I'm going to go to an extra PE class. So know that. And then from 2:30 to 3 o'clock each day, we're calling this student and parent access time. This is dedicated time where you know as a family that you can reach out to your classroom teacher and get supports and get your questions answered so that your student can keep continuing on in their learning process in the next day. So I always say the 1:50 to 2:30, it's the teacher driving the who comes to them. And then the 2:30 to 3 o'clock is for you to have access to the teachers. This is a secondary version of that schedule. What's unique, if you have had secondary students for quite a while, is that this is not their typical bell schedule. This bell schedule mirrors the elementary day. So we thought, given all of the parameters and variables that families are dealing with, having a consistent schedule would help with family routines. So we have every student starting again at 8:30 with an advisory class, started, like I said, at 8:30 with a focus on social emotional learning, as well as building connection and community. Then it mirrors what would have been a traditional high school or middle school experience with a 6-period day, with students traveling between 3 periods on any given day, and then on Fridays having a 30-minute course. Again, consistent schedule with lunch break for 11:50 to 12:50, where those students could help their younger siblings, could help out at home, or they could work independently. The 12:50 to 1:50 block, we have intentionally set aside as learning time, where students would be working independently, either as the follow-up to the lessons they had just received in the morning or in preparation for the lessons they'll be getting the next day. And the same with the real-time personalized learning, there'll be opportunities for students to be invited back in small group to get enrichment, extension, and intervention supports. And then the same 2:30 to 3 o'clock access time for families each day. With this, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, for our special education and ELD students, when schools are closed, there will be opportunities to invite small groups intentionally cohorted together into the school for live instruction, just knowing that they are furthest away from educational justice. And if you are an English language learner, learning remotely adds an extra layer of difficulty. With that, one of the other adaptations we've made to the school year is we've adjusted the calendar. So we have pushed the start of school back to the 8th, in which we'll be having launch conferences, and I'll be going into that in a minute. But just wanted to call that out to families to notice that there will not be conferences in November as were previously scheduled. You'll also note that there's not weather makeup days that have traditionally been, because now that we know we can do real learning in a remote distance way, the next time we have a snowstorm, we're saying, kids, grab your laptops, school's in session. With that, the end of school day remains is June 18th. So, and I'll go into the conference portion here in a minute that will kind of address the September 8th through the 11th. So with this, I'll have Dr. Anderson talk for a minute about how school lunches will work when we're in full distance.
So we, in contrast to what we've been doing since March with pickup every day, our nutrition service staff is actually going to prepare a 5-day kit for both breakfast and lunch that parents can pick up once a week, either on Mondays or Wednesdays. It'll be available at the free or reduced rate for those who qualify. And then for the paid rate for students, it's different than our summer federally reimbursed program. It'll be available at every one of our Spokane schools for pickups. So in your neighborhood, you can pick those up and it'll be available to you to have for the week.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to highlight a little bit of the school supplies we sent out in an earlier message to families, and then I'll let Scott talk about laptop distribution. To date, we've checked out nearly 15,000 laptops. But when we talk about what is the things that kids need, we say it's still the same school supplies that they've always needed. They're going to need tennis shoes. They're going to need a backpack. They're going to need paper, pencils, markers. What's unique to this year, if you're trying to set up a really conducive environment for your student, is headphones. And those are optional, they're not necessary, but it could help eliminate distractions. So we would ask for headphones. And then one really engaging strategy that a lot of teachers use is a whiteboard response, where a student could write a response really quickly or draw a picture really quickly and share it up. So it's kind of that blend of tactile learning as well as being in a virtual setting. So those things I would call out. If you see those on sale at Target or Walmart, I would grab a set of headphones and a whiteboard and some markers. At the secondary level, and this is really unique for math, if you see a stylus, those are often helpful because math wasn't, by not being a written word type of experience, the stylus really helps kids interact with math problems. So with that, I'll kind of let Scott talk about laptop checkouts, and we'll go into a little bit of overview on some of our technology resources.
Yeah, and just a quick note on what Heather said, because it happened to be in the Q&A too. It'd be really great if the headphones that you found also had a mic for your students to interact with their peers and the teachers. So for laptop checkout, like Heather said, there's been a lot of laptop checkout forms filled out online already, which is great. And thank you for doing that. And so at the very top of the list there, and sorry, it's kind of like separated into the second line, it says spokaneschools.org/laptop checkout. It's also available on the website. There's a link at the bottom of the main district homepage that says laptop checkout. So just some bullet point items within there. It's one form for the whole family. It links you to all the school-age students in your family to fill out once for all of them, which is great. And it has an optional $30 insurance program within there. It covers any damage to any laptops, completely optional. There's also an opt-out option within there. If you have your own technology at your house, you can opt out within the form and complete the form. Would really like your family to complete that form, even if you have your own technology at home, because it helps us just understand our district's technology needs now and into the future. Once you complete your laptop checkout form, your school is actually going through and identifying families that have filled out that form and scheduling time for you to come check out and pick up those laptops at your neighborhood school, as well as those families that haven't completed it yet. You might be getting reminders via Blackboard Messenger, texts, or emails in that way. If you had a laptop checked out from this spring and you like it, that's great. We would still like you to bring it to the school just to make sure you have all the updates you need for that computer. And over time, as we get more newer devices with touchscreens brought to our district, you can actually trade it in if you feel like you have an older one via your neighborhood school as well. And just a note too, it's been in the Q&A a couple times, but we will have ITSC support with a dedicated email and a phone line for families to get help.
Thanks. And I was going to piggyback because I saw these questions as you were talking about the books, the consumables, the stuff that school provides students to do the work. Schools will be setting up pickup times in the next week for families to come get the math book, the English book, the handwriting book, all of those things. We also have e-texts available for most of our courses, but some things we just want kids doing the traditional way, like how do you learn how to write in cursive and stuff without having the book. So those materials you'll be getting connected to your schools to pick up in the coming week. At elementary, you'll probably be picking up your supplies and your laptop at the same time. With that, I'll have Scott talk about Clever.
All right, so really appreciate Clever. Even in us as adults, we have a lot of things that we log into with a lot of different usernames and passwords. Clever is really great. It's accessible through the school district website. I tried to highlight there, it's one of the buttons in the blue bar there. It's called Digital Tools. Once you click on Digital Tools, it goes to the next page, which is in the bottom right, and you click on Clever. The really nice part about this for your student is they have to remember one username and password for every application or software or that they use in their classroom, which is really helpful. It's just their student ID and birthday. And then if you also look on your student's district device in the web browser, if you're using Google Chrome, there's what we call an extension in the upper right. It's that blue C. That's also a way to access it without actually having to go through the school district website. Just to give you a look, this is an example of what a student would see when they go in. So a lot of the district applications like Class Dojo or Blackboard or Teams or MobiMax, Alexia, they're all in here. Students just have to log in once the very first time that they come to Clever, and then they can click on all these buttons and it opens up those websites for them and logs them in automatically. Also at the very top, your student's teacher might create a curated teacher page. So at the very top left, there's an example of a teacher page. When they click in there, they actually get to see what the teacher wants to highlight for the student that they might be using the most often in classrooms as well, which is really nice. So with Microsoft Teams as our chosen learning management system where your students will go, I just wanted to highlight a really great resource. It's at spokaneschools.org/learning-at-home. If you check there, we continually update with resource guides and helpful tips for families. Most notably, the second item down on Microsoft Teams under that green bar on the left is the Family and Guardian Guide to Microsoft Teams. So in the bottom right, the kind of moving graphic, the GIF, it is showing you kind of versions of what's in that actual document. It's a PDF. It's a lot of pages, but it's a lot of pages because, as you can see, it offers really, really big graphics that show you exactly what you need to do to interact with Microsoft Teams. This is an example, and sorry, it's a little bit small on the left side, but of what your student would see for an elementary classroom versus a subject-specific classroom. So on the far left, it's an elementary classroom, and then on that little kind of box on the left graphic, it actually shows a physical science classroom as well. And then on the right, lower right, it shows you once you're in a classroom, teachers have what they call channels, where they can separate at the elementary level between the subjects, or they can offer different kind of tools and resources within their classroom. And then on the right side of that graphic, it also shows just kind of like what we call a feed, where teachers will post announcements, they'll post helpful tips. It's how they're communicating with their students on the next assignment and just the things that they needed to do in their classroom. And then another exciting feature, which everybody really likes, that's just come out, is called the Microsoft Teams Together mode. So we know that being on a digital screen for a long period of time for us as adults or children is really challenging. And one way that Microsoft Teams is trying to tackle that is this all-in-one view. So students can turn their webcams on and they can be in a classroom all in one space together with their classmates and just have a good time as one classroom in kind of a lecture hall there.
So with that, I'm gonna lead into conferences. Our goal is to get you the technology tools you need and the curriculum resources that kids need prior to conferences. Conferences are scheduled for the 8th through the 11th of September, so just after Labor Day. Conferences will be scheduled between the student family and either their classroom teacher if they're at elementary school or their advisor if they're at secondary school. And the goal is really to create a connection, to create community between students and staff. It's mutually beneficial for people to be known and to have identity. And so we're really focused on that opportunity for families. In addition, it's an opportunity for you to ask questions. Just like Scott was showing, there's a lot to this. And yes, we have tips and tricks, but sometimes the best thing to do is to have someone walk you through it. We're going to look for opportunities to help you onboard to remote learning and our expectations and platforms. As I said earlier, and we demonstrated in the schedules, this is not what you experienced in spring. This is different. This is teachers teaching live in the moment through the digital platform. Also during this week, we'll have students that will have like a scavenger hunt. It'll be age appropriate, so we'll have it leveled for students where they'll get to explore the new digital tools and resources that are available to them. And we're really hoping to get them excited about what we've learned and what we've added to their experience and to connect them to the learning objectives that they'll be experiencing the first quarter. So with that, tomorrow, you will be getting an email saying our regular updates, and in it, there will be a section on conferences. And during that, it will say, go to this, it'll link you to the website, and there's a place for you to schedule your conference. They're all master linked by your student ID number and email address. So you would go to the website that it takes you to. It asks if you have an email address on file. If you hit yes, it'll ask you to type it in and it will link all of your students that have that email to it. If it says no, there are workarounds. So it says, if no, then do this and this, because we know not everyone's email is up to date. So with that, when you click in and you get in, you'll see a screen similar to this. So those are all the options that are available and you just would select the time. You'd select the green button. You're like, I want this time. And then it would set the schedule up with your teacher automatically. When you do that, there will be a series of questions. So first, there's just some basic needs questions, as we're trying to help families as much as possible. So we need to know if people are food insecure, if they're worried about rent, things like that, that we can help connect people to community partners. In addition, we're asking questions about your student to really understand what the last 6 months have been for them. This is like no other year, as Dr. Swinyard mentioned, and so we really need an opportunity to know and understand the strengths, the highlights, the growth that maybe happened with your student, and also, do they have anxieties? Is there something that's keeping them up at night? How are they absorbing living through a pandemic? We're particularly worried about our students in transition in terms of like our kindergartners, our 7th graders, our 9th graders, people who are going to a new environment, and now that environment's digital. So the more that you can answer and fill in those gaps for us, we think the stronger we'll be able to support your student down the road. So that will be one. When you get your students' emails or your sign up, you will be asked to answer those questions for each student. So know that, and we'll just use the information really as a support.
And we really felt like adjusting our school calendar was really important, as Heather mentioned, to lay that foundation and start the year with conferences. Everything that happens in our schools orbits around relationships and communities and the connections we make between teachers and students, and teachers and families. And so this is that opportunity to have that opportunity to connect, talk, surface some of the concerns, work through what the questions are, and then, as Heather mentioned, participate in that screener so that challenges can be addressed and we can get after things right from the start of the year.
Yeah. So once you do that and you select, you will get a confirmation screen. So it'll pop up and you will say, oh, here it is, and then you can add it to your calendar. So we tried to be as slick as possible and make it as user-friendly. Following that, the teacher will send you a reminder link so that if it's a virtual meeting, you just click on the link and you'll pop right into your meeting. So with that, I will stop sharing and we'll start answering questions because they're rolling in. I'm going to start with one that was emailed just because it's for an incoming 7th grader and that's probably close to my heart. So the question is, when will we know what our schedule is? And this is a family who's transitioning from elementary to middle and they don't have a PowerSchool account as they're transitioning from Teacher Ease to PowerSchool. So Scott, I didn't know if you could talk about the PowerSchool piece and I could talk about the schedule piece.
Yeah, actually, just learned this yesterday. So your school specifically sets up the username and password for your students. So if you contact your school directly, they'll be able to tell you your student's username and password and actually print out a report for you that shows you some intro directions, notably for incoming middle schoolers.
Thanks. And in terms of schedules, that's part of the reason the delay to the conference was coming out, is because we're trying to finalize all of our master schedules due to the movement in enrollment to families choosing to go full virtual for the entire year. And so that's tomorrow. You'll get a good shot of where your kid is because that PowerSchool ID is linked to the conference so that it's linked to the right teacher. Let's see. Dr. Anderson, could you speak to transportation and school buses?
Yes, so we are currently evaluating whether we can provide transportation for food distribution. We found that many of our families did not have the vehicle or the means to come to school, so we're looking into that. And then the second area of transportation we're looking into is for the day camps that we're having. But the full transportation actually won't start up until we're back in person learning, and that'll be the regular routes that will, and there'll be communication at that time on the route times and stops and so forth.
Thank you. So Scott, technology question. You're going to be popular tonight. How do students access their classroom on Teams on the first day?
So we are loading students into Teams around September 4th. And so when that happens, your student will be able to go in through Clever or through Office 365 or through your computer if you've downloaded Teams directly to your computer, and they'll be able to see their teacher because we're assigning teachers and students via PowerSchool rosters. So they'll just be automatically linked.
Thank you. Dr. Anderson, there's several questions out there again about lunches. If you could just highlight again when students, families will have access to get meal pickups.
And so we will be emailing out the actual pickup times that you can do, but it'll be both morning and at noon. Monday and Wednesdays are the two pickup times. It'll be very similar. It'll just be a box full of 5 days worth of lunches and breakfasts, and they will be picked up outside the front in the parent pickup area.
Thank you. Scott, how many of our laptops are touchscreen? You're muted. I'm sure it was a brilliant answer.
It was great. I was already done. No, we have a few different models. The Lenovo 300E, we have two different versions, version 1 and version 2. Those have touch screens. I believe our N24s have touch screens. But if in doubt, you can swipe with your finger, and if nothing happens, then it's not a touch screen. We have a new shipment of touchscreen devices coming in the next few months, at which point it's also kind of a question in the Q&A there too, at which point your school will be contacting you for a potential device swap if you want to at that time swap out your device.
All right, I'll give this one to Gwen. So I listed the school supplies for elementary and kind of just made one generic list, but they were asking if pens are needed for K4. What are our school supplies specifically for that age?
I don't think that you'll need pens for lower grade levels. And we will supply you with your essential school supplies.
Yes, for our littles, they will be getting a bag when they get their class books. They'll be getting a bag of the materials needed.
So Heather, a couple things that have been common in the chat is around when will I get my laptop and when will I get my materials and books. Each school will be communicating out with you individually, one on what their schedule will be if you're secondary, who your teachers will be, and that will also happen this coming week at elementary. So schools will communicate individually about schedules and who the teacher assignments are. They'll also be communicating out when they'll do their pickup for laptop distribution and when they'll do their pickup for textbooks, consumables, workbooks, things of that nature. Another thing that was in the chat that I think would be great to have our school directors talk to is, what does it look like if you don't know anybody, if you're new to our district, or you're making that hard transition and your student's just worried about not having any friends, and that's a huge burden on a student in any typical school day, and it's even more so in a distance environment. So Sean or Gwen, could you touch base a little bit on just what strategies our teachers are thinking about to build a sense of community?
Well, building a community will be at the forefront of teachers' work right at the beginning of school. They'll be working to get to know their students and for them to get to know each other. So they'll have multiple activities for students to participate. They'll also be engaging students in social emotional learning and touching base with kids on a daily basis to check in and see how they're doing and helping them with friends.
I would just add to what Gwen has shared that specifically the start of each school day has that community time with a specific teacher at the secondary level. We're referring to as the advisory time. That's a place where that social emotional learning will take place, where students will really work to connect with each other, but also each content teacher is going to make that a focus in their particular class as well. And so that community concept and ensuring every student is known is going to be a part of our focus in addition to our curriculum.
Thank you. Dr. Harris and Scott, I'm not sure, it's kind of a joint answer. So looking for support from the community around internet and supporting families maintain internet or get internet?
Yeah, so we have a few different options. We're still waiting to hear from OSPI at the state level. They're going to have internet options for our families, in addition to us pursuing conversations with Comcast around their Internet Essentials program. It was offered this spring, but it had quite a few barriers that they have since removed. And then as well, we have a limited amount of T-Mobile hotspots that are mobile that families can check out from our ITSC department that operate off of cell phone towers.
Thank you. Scott, sorry, it's another one, and I just giggle because I come from middle school. My kids don't remember their login and password from 7th grade. What do I do?
Yeah, same thing as the previous answer. If you contact your school, they'll be able to print out a report for you so you know your username and password. If that's a PowerSchool specific question, that's what you can do. If it's just a generic login to the laptop, it's the student's district email, which is their last name plus the last 4 digits of their student ID at sps81.org, and their password is their birth date.
Thank you. So, Dr. Anderson, could you speak for a moment about daycare and day camp? There's just several questions in the chat, and maybe giving an overview would help.
So the Spokane Public Schools SPS Day Camp, it will run from 7:45 in the morning till 3:45 in the afternoon. So about 45 minutes before school starts and about 45 minutes after school ends. It will be held at all of our elementary schools. We're limiting the number of students at a school to just 20 students. And we will have them spread out through the cafeteria, library, so that they are socially distancing. There will be staff there to assist them on staying connected on their laptops to their teachers, giving them the breaks, just like the class schedule has, lunch, helping them with any lessons that they're doing. So it'll be a kind of a guided distance learning experience, but they will have their regular classroom teacher that they're connecting with. The program, we're looking for underwriting for scholarships for low-income families. So that is something that Dr. Harris is working on, so that students who may be on free or reduced lunch can be provided that. Lunch will be served every day. So if families do qualify for free or reduced lunch, the lunch will be made right there at the school and available. If you are not on free or reduced lunch, you can buy a lunch using the system that we use. And as I mentioned, we are looking to see if we could offer transportation to those day camp programs and back. It might work more like what we've done for our option schools, which is kind of a hub model where it stops along the way, like an STA bus stop at this park or at this school as it makes its way to the school assigned. We have had a lot of registrations, about 700 registrations. We're going through the process right now of verifying and communicating with those families and then assigning them. There are some schools that there's more families that want to be in day camp for that school than there are slots, the 20. So we are offering schools that are close by. And on the South Hill, very popular, lots of folks have signed up. We're even looking at offering one of the day camps at Chase Middle School.
Thank you.
Yeah, Heather, I would just add to the conversation about day camp, as well as bringing in students to provide limited in-person instruction, which will be part of our distance learning model. And it's just really important to note that we're going to be managing very closely the total number of kids on site at any one time. And there is a big difference between having 600 kids at an elementary school on site and having 50 to 100. And we recognize that it wouldn't make sense for us to fill our buildings full of kids and not have typical school. And that wouldn't meet the safety guidelines. It wouldn't allow us to utilize really strict cohorting, and it wouldn't make sense. And so we're going to have a limited number of kids on site. We want to provide limited in-person instruction for small groups of kids. We want to do everything we can to mitigate the impact to the childcare needs in our community. So that's why we're providing those options in our schools. That limited number of students, it'll allow us to maintain the social distancing requirements. It'll also allow us to maintain strict cohorting. As soon as you fill our schools full of buildings and you get that number gets larger, then maintaining the cohorting, making sure kids aren't intermixing, that becomes really, really difficult. And so we're providing this limited number of students because we believe those are strategies that will help us get through this really challenging time.
Thank you. A clarifying question. Well, I have two on deck here. So one is straight from a student, so I always like to answer those. If someone would like to respond to, as a student, I'm not comfortable being on camera. Do I have to be on camera to be part of class?
For all this is different for everybody, and everybody's challenges throughout this look different. Every family's going to experience different barriers and challenges, and every student's going to face different barriers and challenges. And ultimately, we want to work with families, come alongside students, identify what those things are, and then provide supports, resources, interventions, and be as flexible and as accommodating as we can. We're going to get through this if we're working together and if we're partnering together. And that's our interest. Our teachers have poured in an incredible amount of time planning for the start of school and planning around this model. It's been a significant shift for them, and it's a significant shift for kids. So we're going to be flexible and accommodating for students. We're going to want to have those individual conversations with families, talk through what those things are, and then come up with a plan that's going to work best for everyone.
Well, I'm going to ask you to do some additional clarification. So there is lots of confusion because we all interchange the word virtual, the word remote, the word distance. And so people are confused between what is it that we're offering at our comprehensive schools and then what is this virtual school?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And all these terms are, in some ways, they're interchangeable. They get used interchangeably on the news. They get used interchangeably in our community. Really, everywhere you look, there's all this different terminology, and it's hard to keep track of it all. And so the clarification we want to draw is we have a distance learning model for all of our neighborhoods comprehensive schools. And that's that real-time learning experience that we have for our students. That's the model where we're going to bring in students for limited in-person instruction. And that's the model that's the best fit for your family if you want to stay with your home school and you want to transition and phase back to in-person instruction when we get guidelines from health officials to do so. So that's our distance learning model for our neighborhood schools. That is the model that the vast majority of our students will be participating in. And then we have Spokane Virtual Academy. And that's the option that would be the best fit if a family felt like they just don't think they're going to be comfortable at any point this year to go back into a school building. And unless there is a vaccine or a verifiable treatment method for COVID, that they just don't think that it's going to be something they're comfortable with. And so we wanted to provide that full distance learning model where we can guarantee this experience will be distance learning all year. There won't be any phasing to in-person instruction. That's the best choice for those families. So we have our distance learning model for our neighborhood schools. That's what most families will be participating, students will participate in. And then we have Spokane Virtual Academy. That's the full year guaranteed distance learning model for students. And we know that families might change their mind. And there might be families who think they want to phase back in when we get guidance to do that, and they might change their mind. And we know we have virtual academy families who don't think right now they can ever imagine sending their kids back to a building right now. And the conditions have changed quickly throughout this, and they might have a different feeling when the time comes. When and if families change their mind, we'll do the best we can to accommodate those requests. The guaranteed enrollment to be in these programs is taking place in August, so we can staff our schools, put our teachers in the places that we need them. And then if families want to change their choice as we move forward, then we'll do everything we can to accommodate that, but it'll be based on space available.
Thank you. Shauna, I have two questions coming your way. They're not connected, but they're both about high school. So 0 hour, is that going to happen? And if so, what will it look like? And then questions around graduation. Will the date be the same? Will it, what are we hoping for in terms of graduation?
So I'll start with the first question, and 0 hour is planned for those courses that are moving forward with 0 hour, and that will be prior to the first period of each day, and that will be on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So there'll be a very specific schedule for those students. With regard to graduation, those dates are set and they are published. And as of right now, as we're starting this school year, we are still moving forward with our graduation plans for those specific dates. And obviously we will adjust the ceremony as we did this past year, depending on where we are with regard to the risk level for Spokane County and what our local health officials allow us to do.
Thank you.
Dr. Anderson, could you speak? Sorry, Heather. I'm seeing a flurry of questions about meals and how our meal program will work for students in the distance learning model. Could you talk a little bit about that and the innovative idea that our team has come up with around meal kits?
So yes, we are actually preparing a 5-day meal kits that families can pick up once a week. I think it's either on Mondays or Wednesdays. We'll publish the times. They'll pick them up the same as they did throughout the spring and summer out in front of the school. Our nutrition services staff will actually be out there at the set times. They'll have the names of folks who ordered the meals. And so there'll be an ordering system that you can use to pick up the meals and take them for the week.
Thank you. Dr. Harris, can you provide a little context around some of the community partnerships that you've been fostering with your team and what services they're going to be providing to our students and our families?
Okay, one thing that I'll say in particular is that our community partners and the Great Spokane Fashion has really been reaching out to us as a district, offering up various things, various resources, such as facilities that are empty during this time or would give us access to those places if we have a need for that in the future, as well as there are certain providers that's working with meal programming and various other type of things to really support the community at large. Our health district we've been working with them in particular, and they've been looking to supply certain PPE equipment, protective equipment for our schools and et cetera. But there's a gambit of various resources that they're bringing forth. And what we're doing to a great degree because of all the variables that are at play. Many people are reaching out, so we're not even at a place to where we really could inventory everything that's been offered to us yet. But we're working with our providers and various partners out there and just really having a lot of conversations around what does it look like for us to work together during this particular time, because we know our students, the majority of our students will not be, in traditional settings or in schools and et cetera. So many of them are reaching out, looking to host potential learning centers or learning pods to where families would be able to reach out and have a place for their children to go. You have childcare providers who are, in communication with us around trying to coordinate what services can look like and how their facilities will be able to support the education for our families as well. So they are reaching out in particular. And as Dr. Swinyer mentioned, we know our city is working with him in particular around other resources to be able to supply some of those connectivity resources that's needed around Wi-Fi and all of that.
Thank you.
And Heather, back to meals, I just learned that tomorrow online on our district website, all the information about the meal program will be posted. So folks can tune in to SpokaneSchools.org and get all the info on our school meal program.
That's true. And our website is changing every day. We're adding information as it comes in. So it is always worth a glance in the morning or at the end of the day to see what's new. There's a question here about libraries and e-texts and resources like that to connect students to rich literature. And I would just respond that we have paid for some e-text libraries especially for our younger students. But in addition, every student in Spokane Schools has a public library card, and through Clever has digital access to get the ebooks from the Spokane Library. So you check it out just like you would if you were going to the library, but they get the e-text version, and there's fun little magazines on there for kids and different explorations. So know that there are lots of tools out there. Again, once you log into Clever, there's a whole world that both students and families enjoy. Sean, your favorite question, extracurriculars and sports. What do we know?
What do we know? We know that the WIAA, which is the state organization that oversees high school and middle school athletics, has created 4 seasons rather than our traditional 3. And the first season, which begins September 7th, is a season for that is optional opportunity for sports. They can compete in season 1, or they can wait and compete in the season that is designated for that sport. The Greater Spokane League, which our high schools are members of, has elected not to participate in the alternate season 1, which means that we are scheduled to participate in season 2, 3, and 4. Season 2 is our traditional winter sports, which will begin December 28th. That is all pending where we are as Spokane County in terms of our risk classification and phase. We would need to be pretty much in phase 3, where we are currently in phase 2. We'd need to be in phase 3 for some of those sports to be able to start. Season 3, which begins the end of February, beginning of March, are our traditional fall sports. And then season 4, which is our traditional spring sports, begin at the beginning of April and run through the end of June. So we are holding right now until December 28th and hoping that we have improved our risk factor in Spokane County that will allow those sports to occur.
Thank you. Adam, this one, it kind of highlights several questions that I've seen in the chat, and it's regarding a 5-year-old who's entering kindergarten, who has an IEP, and just wanting to know about when the option for in-person instruction would be available. Will there be groups that are prioritized in getting in?
Yeah, well, we're going to be working with all of our special education students to provide IEP team conversations to make sure that we have the right program in place for those students. And we'll be prioritizing bringing our special education and our English language learner students into our schools for limited in-person instruction. And we're going to be, as I mentioned earlier, doing everything we can to phase back in our students as the conditions improve. And that will begin most likely with our youngest grade levels. So we know that this is a really challenging way for our kindergartners to start. And our heart really breaks for this being the way that they're starting their school experience. And we're going to do everything we can to make it the best as it possibly can be for them. And that includes getting a plan into place to support their needs and bringing them in when we can for in-person instruction.
Thank you, Scott. There's a couple, I mean, there's not a couple, there's quite a few questions out there about bandwidth and about the internet and how are we looking to support families? Are we working with Comcast or any of our other partners in the business community so that if a family has 4 students trying to log on at once to a virtual meeting, what can they expect?
Yeah, it's kind of difficult without knowing everybody's internet bandwidth. There's actually, if you Google internet speed test, you can do that for free on your devices to find out what your bandwidth is. We've noticed that most bandwidths actually support 4 laptops, 4 of our district laptops using Teams at the same time. We've also tested the T-Mobile hotspot that we have limited availability on for families that also run actually 5 meetings at the same time. And again, we are continuing to grow that conversation with Comcast to figure out how to offer more internet connections to our families that have an actual decent speed.
Thank you. This question is from a parent looking to the experience that their family had in the spring to what they're hopeful for in the fall. Can someone speak to the training and support that our teachers have gotten over the summer and what we're doing in the lead up to the school year that will make this experience different? And if not, I can take it. So I'll go. Our teachers have started since March working on plans to support kids. We have invested a ton of time, a ton of energy, and a ton of love into building an experience that I think we can all be proud of. It will involve engaging digital resources. It'll have an adapted scope and sequence that really focuses on the essentials of learning for each content. I tease that we've taken the noise out of education. Teachers spent 2 weeks ago, we had over 9,000 classes taken by our teachers. That was all by choice. That was optional training that they chose to go to get training in technology, to get training in curriculum changes, to get training in social emotional learning. In addition, next week, we've dedicated the whole week to supporting teachers on board, build plans together, and really build a robust experience for your kids. So we're excited about that opportunity. We've also built in really intentional time throughout the year to continue learning, because we know we're going to learn enough to get us going, but that's not where it stops. That we need to continue to be responsive, both to our students and to our teachers' needs, to make sure that the learning continues to happen.
And I would just add to that our teachers desperately want to have our kids in our buildings and have a typical school experience. And they recognize that we are following the guidelines of public health officials. And in response to that, they have poured themselves in every way, shape, or form into building their ability to provide students the best experience possible in a distance learning format. And our teachers have given up a significant amount of their summer and time away from friends and family to plan, collaborate with each other, participate in the professional development that Heather mentioned. So this is certainly a moment where we should all be incredibly proud of our teachers and our staff and the sacrifices that they have made and are planning to make to provide students a learning opportunity this year that's going to help them continue to move forward and will help us set the stage to phase back into our schools as quickly as we can.
Thank you. So Scott, I'm going to give you one last set of questions here, and it's just clarification. What does insurance cover? What happens if my computer's glitchy? Can I trade it in? What if I like the one I have now more than the one you're trying to trade me in for? So those are some of the ones I've seen out there.
Yeah, so the optional $30 insurance plan covers all damage to a district device. Our district laptops currently are about $370 to replace, and the insurance would cover that full replacement. If you are happy with the laptop you have from the spring, you can keep it. Again, we'd highly encourage you to fill out the laptop checkout form. There's some information about just kind of best practices and terms and conditions about our laptops within that form, as well as just the information I kind of provided about the $30 optional insurance if you want that. And again, it really helps us with you completing that form. It helps us understand the needs of our families around technology, whether you need to use your own devices or you would like to use a district device. And if you want to make sure that your computer is the most up to date, it'd be best to go to your school, open up the laptop, log in with your student's username and password to make sure that it's connected to our network and gets all the updates it needs.
Thank you. And before I turn it over to you, Dr. Swinyard, for the goodbyes, just a note that we do record these. They'll be available. We are collecting questions. There's obviously no way to get through 300 or 400 questions, but we are collecting those to develop FAQs that we will post on our website. Those two are getting refreshed daily.
Yeah, well, we thank you for everyone for being here tonight, and we want to continue to provide updates to you and continue to support you through this process. And our theme throughout the last few months has been together we can. We can get through this if we stick together, if we collaborate, and we can navigate the days ahead in a way that is going to put our students in a position to be successful. And I would just really encourage families, as we're leading up to the start of the school year, to start talking to your students about what their year is going to look like and what the start of school will look like. And every student processes that a little bit differently, but now is a good time to start having those conversations with them and start talking about routines and structures. and what the start of the day is going to look like, and what breakfast is going to look like, and what time we're going to log in, and when everybody's going to get, dressed for the day. Also start talking about where everyone is going to be located in your house. And one of the things we recommend is not for everybody to sit all together in one place if you have multiple students. So working on trying to find different places for them to sit. And then just again, please reach out to us. Reach out to us if you have questions. Reach out to us if you have concerns. We desperately want to process those through with you. Again, together we can get through this, but we have to partner, we have to collaborate, and we're eager to do that. Our teachers, our counselors, our administrators, they are eager to hear from you and to, again, just make the best that we can of a really challenging situation and handle this in a way that is not only going to help our kids in the moment, but also model to them what it looks like for a community to come together and focus on the best of our values and the best of our ideals to show our kids how you navigate a challenging time. So appreciate you being here. We look forward to seeing you more and seeing your families in conference week. We look forward to your kids' faces. Even though it's going to be virtual, we can't wait to see them. And we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through it together. Thanks, everybody, and have a great night.